Max Raymond Finley. United States Army, World War II. Max Finley was one of my most dearest, precious, beloved veterans that I've interviewed. He was one of the first D-Day veterans I interviewed. I interviewed him in Price, Utah, almost 20 years ago. It was August 15th, 2003. And Max was one of the few veterans that I have who landed on Utah Beach during the Normandy invasion on D-Day. Most of the veterans you've heard are from Omaha Beach. So Max was Utah Beach, from Utah, Price, Utah. Got to know him and his wife, Vera Finley, quite well. We would stop through Price on our way to Salt Lake and have German chocolate cake. And Max was an avid photographer, loved butterflies, so do I. And I miss Max dearly. I was fortunate to speak at his memorial service. He passed away 10 years ago yesterday, January 16, 2013. And I got to speak at his graveside service. It was quite an honor. But Max Finley served with the fire direction team of the 549th Field Artillery Battalion, which was activated in Camp Hood, Texas. I think it was May of 1943. And Max was inducted into the Army in 1943, just before that in Fort Douglas, Utah. They were called the 49ers, and they had a significant role in the landing on D-Day on Utah Beach. Max wrote a book called Softly Spoken, and I don't think this is in print now, but this is a great book. He was an author, did so many great things with his life, and I love this book, and I miss Max dearly. And he was a great man, and I'll never forget him, and thankful that David Beamer has sponsored this story. David, I want to look in this camera and thank you for making it possible for others to hear Max's story, David Beamer. In honor of your father-in-law, Maurice Raffensperger, who was also a D-Day veteran of Utah Beach. So we're dedicating this in honor of your father-in-law, Maurice. Thank him for his service too. So maybe him and Max knew each other, who knows. Anyways, I'd like to just thank you, David, very much for that. And folks, if you'd like to sponsor one of these stories, or I'd like to encourage you to consider sponsoring a story like David Beamer has done today. There's information in the video description. In the comment section of the video, there's an opportunity to donate to this work, or on my website, larrycappetto.com, sponsor a vet. So I would greatly encourage you to do that. It's a feel-good project, folks. I don't monetize these videos, like I said, and it'd be an opportunity for you to take ownership and have a connection with these veterans. So these stories are precious. Max Finley is one of my dearest veterans. He's looking down from heaven today. I know he is. I miss him dearly. He also received a Purple Heart for his service in the military in World War II. So, all right, folks, please subscribe to this channel, share these videos. Let's keep this thing going in honor of Maurice Raffensperger, David Beamer. Thank you again. I share with you now Max Finley's story that I did with him almost 20 years ago. God bless you. Sometimes the wives get pretty loud. I have to send them to another room. No, that's all right.
Yeah, but no. remember that anyway, honey.
That's never happened. I'm just kidding. Sometimes they think they gotta leave. You know, I want them to stay, actually. Okay, Max. What I want you to do first of all is just introduce yourself. I know who you are, but give me your name and then the unit or the division you're with over during the Normandy invasion.
Okay. My name is Max Raymond Finley. I was with the 549th Field Artillery Battalion in the fire direction team. And
that's good. That's a good introduction. What I know 59 years ago is a long time ago, but what I want you to do is just the best that you can. Start off, just tell me a little bit about D-Day, your preparations for D-Day. You don't need to go back to 1942. Just
just maybe a week or a day or a month before, I'm sure you marshaled in England, and then you set off on a transport ship and were later dispatched to a smaller landing craft. So just kind of give me the story about D-Day, how you heard about it and its happenings as you prepared for that.
Okay. My problem is remembering. Anyway, we're stationed in a city called Cheltenham in central England, and about a week prior to D-Day, we were moved south to Weymouth, where we weren't allowed to talk to anyone or move out of our barracks area, because the D-Day had been planned and they were trying to keep it from reaching German hands, of course. And so we weren't allowed to talk to anyone outside of our barracks area. On the 4th of June, we were marched down to the troop ship, the Charles Carroll, and that was on the 4th of June afternoon, and we expected to move out that evening across the channel to the beaches that we were supposed to invade. But there was a terrible storm on the English Channel, and General Eisenhower at that time postponed the invasion for a day when he was informed that the weather would improve slightly. And so we had moved slightly out of the harbor and then moved back in on our troop ship. In the meantime, as the many hundreds of troops that was on that ship, we were told about where we'd be landing and what outfit would be with who. Our fire direction team was assigned to the E Company of the 322nd Regiment of the 4th Infantry Division, which meant that we'd be the first wave in as the fire direction team. We were to direct fire from our artillery pieces, which happened to be what they called the long toms, 155 millimeter rifles. And we were able to move out the next morning on our troop ship and cross the channel as far as the big ship could be moved. And then we were, and early that morning, we were called to a breakfast, a pre-invasion breakfast, which the good GI cooks had prepared for us, and we wasn't able to eat anyway, anticipating what might be coming up. And about 4:30 in that morning, we went over the side of the USS Charles Carroll into our, what we called the ducks. There was a landing craft that held about 35 persons. And the weather was still quite rough. There was a lot of huge waves. At the time we were loaded, we were all wet. And before, we had to circle our ship for several several minutes while the other landing crafts was being loaded. In the meantime, the USS Texas, huge battleship, was firing rounds not very far from us, and they were huge guns, 16-inch guns, that when their shells landed, they just cleared the area for hundreds of yards, or dozens of yards. It wasn't long before everyone in the boat was just as seasick as possible. We were just terrible, and they had given us little sacks knowing that we might be, but that they were soon filled and thrown overboard, and we used our helmets to keep it off the next guy's shoulders or in his face. We crossed the channel, and on the way we had a artillery shell land close by, which made a huge hole in one side of our landing craft and tore a large patch out of my backpack. And but we continued. We got to the shores of Normandy, and the what do they call them, the coxswain didn't want to take the boat too close to shore because of the heavy artillery fire from the German positions, and he was finally persuaded to move in far enough so that the ones with that were all of us had packs out was too heavy to pack anyway. 65 pounds or more, and we waded ashore. And when I stepped off into about waist-high water for me, some of the fellows were a lot shorter, and it was up chest high. And a couple of them stepped in shell holes and disappeared. We finally waded to shore and hid behind some beach obstacles that had been placed there to stop us from moving in with tanks and so forth. And we hadn't gone probably 30 yards up the beach until our leader, Lieutenant Peterson, was hit in the upper stomach, and we helped him to a seawall about 50 yards in from where the water was. It was low tide. We helped him there, but before we could do anything for him, he bled to death, really. It just tore his stomach. It was probably from a mortar shell. Instead of a loud crashing noise like an artillery shell, it makes a thump. You could tell the difference between artillery and a mortar shell by the sound of it. So we thought it was. Anyway, we're scared to death. There was 9 of us left, and we were assigned to this Company E. Which is an infantry outfit, and they had an engineer outfit with them that was supposed to clear the beach and mines. We made our way in as a fire direction team and waited for artillery pieces to move in, which was supposed to follow us in, I think, on the 4th wave. But only 6 of the 12 guns ever got to shore, and they had to be cleaned up before they could ever be used. So we just became infantrymen for the next 6 or 7 days. We followed on them, did our skirmishing with the Germans. And when first little town we came to, I think, was called Sainte Marie du Mont. Just a small town, just inside of the beach area. We followed a path.
Take your hand off the microphone.
Oh, we followed a path that led us to the west for quite a ways, and our assignment was to link up with the 102nd Airborne Division. So we made several little towns, and I forget the name of most of them, but there was the beach, the Utah beach was, I think the French called it Saint Magdalene Beach. But we moved close to a town after that, after some more skirmishing with the Germans, to a place called Veerville. And late that afternoon, we met up with some of the first 102nd Airborne troops, just a few miles from Saint Mary-Église.
Let me go back for a minute before you get too far out. You know, that morning you were going to have breakfast, getting ready to go. I mean, tell me about the mood of the man. Tell me about what you remember about getting into the landing craft, if you were climbing down a cargo net, and then that ride to shore again. Tell me that again. I mean, I know you guys were sick, but I mean, what's the mood of the man? Did you think something bad was going to happen? Do you think the beach was secure? I mean, what were your thoughts? What were you thinking about?
Well, we assembled on deck of our troop ship, and it was probably around 4:30, if I remember right. We stood there for a long time without much being said. We was thinking about what might happen, and of course all worried about that. And we wouldn't have mind staying there the rest of the day, just to it was a sober mood. We were not anticipating leaving the ship to invade France at all. And so
you're going to shore. I mean, are you just focused on your mission, or are you looking around? Are you seeing? Are you hearing things? What's going on?
Yeah, when I left out, we passed a boat on the way in that sunk, but there were people clinging to the sides of the thing that had turned over. But we could not stop to help them. So that sobered everyone up, seeing those people who would die. And I'll tell you, I was so seasick, and it's hard to remember just exactly what I was thinking, you know.
Were you being shot at before you landed? Was there artillery hitting?
The artillery was,
what did that sound like? I mean, were machine gun bullets hitting the boat? Or?
Oh, yes. Yeah, they were. The artillery shells was landing all over the water. It was just a rain of bombs and or shells. You were scared to death. You didn't know what had happened the next minute. After you see someone die, you can't help but think, I wish I was gone. I wish I was somewhere else. Let's see, what else could I say?
So you landed, you're on the beach. Did the ramp go down in that?
The ramp went down. There was machine gun fire. The ram, you could hear the bullets ricochet from that. And though there weren't, I think the two that I remember, though there was some injured, was the ones that had a full pack and stepped in shell holes and didn't come back up. And though there were the machine gun bullets were zipped past and hit the water, you know, you tried to make yourself as small as possible going in. Let's see.
No, that's good. Don't, I mean, what you said is perfect. It's good. It's good.
I say I can't think what else I should say about the landing. It was a big shock, though, when we hardly got to shore when our leader was injured so terribly, and two of us helped him to a 4-foot wall along the beach area, a seawall, and tried to help him, but he had lost so much before we could do anything. Before we could get a medic there, he had died. And I think Lieutenant Peterson was one of the nicest young guys you'd ever meet in your life. That was a shock to us, to see one of our fellow men die that quick, you know. That's when you really knew that you was in a war. Then I was upset knowing that they were trying to kill me. They were trying to shoot me. Yeah, it's just an awful feeling. It's just.
Here, I want to do something now. I asked all the veterans the same question, so I want you to think about this question. But you know, we kind of discussed this a little bit. But you know, we'll never have to experience what you went through. You know, thankfully, you know, the freedoms and the liberties we have today, I think, are a lot because of what you guys did back then. If you had a message today to the young kids, based on what you went through, society as it is today, the freedoms we have, the liberties that we have, what would you tell a young person today regarding war, or regarding the freedoms that they have today? What would your message be to a young child today?
Well, after the things that I saw in Germany, I would tell anyone that would listen not to go to war. It's a horrible thing. And to see the results of cannon and mortar and machine gun fire, you just would not want any young person, anybody, to experience that same thing. The way I feel about it now is that what's happening in the Middle East is a big mistake, especially for those young people that's not coming back, you know, and their families. I'd hate to see anything like that happen again, but I think the young people should know what the results of wars are to individuals and to families.
Do you consider yourself a hero?
I don't. The heroes were those people that didn't come back. No, I just excuse me.
It's fine. Just take your time.
When you remember your friends that's buried there, you know who the real heroes were. And the rest of us that were lucky enough to come home were just doing a job that was necessary.
Max, tell me about freedom. What's your definition of freedom?
Our freedom, knowing what had gone on in Germany, those people were so, what would be the word for it? They couldn't live without somebody peeking over their shoulder, you know, and say if they made the wrong move, they were gone. Freedom is to do the things that you would like to do within certain laws, you know. To go to school, to utter the thoughts that you want to say, to write, to move around, to change positions. That's the freedoms that we enjoy today. I think that's one result of our victories in World War II, is that we're able to do those things that are necessary in life without someone saying that you can't do that, you know. Yeah.
That's good. You know, let me tell you a short story. When I hang my flag, I usually display it every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I reflect back to you guys, to your generation, and I really am thankful for what we have. I know there have been wars since then, but for some reason I always think back to World War II, because if we hadn't have stopped Hitler and the things that were being done, who knows what the world will be like today. And he was on the verge of jet power, a number of things.
Yeah, the
So it
V1 and the V2 bombs. Yeah.
So I'm, you know, thankful for what you did.
Well, like I say, I don't think most of us that's been lucky enough to come home are not especially heroes of any type. We did a job that was necessary, but like I say, those that didn't come back are the real heroes. I think of my friends, and I know that the work that they did, the good job they did, the good soldiers that they were. And that makes me real sad.
Have you been back to Normandy since?
I haven't been back. They had a reunion for the 549th Field Artillery back in Massachusetts, which we had prepared to go, and for some reason,
Family crisis, we couldn't do it, so we'd be great.
yeah. So we missed that, but that's close as we ever came. We'd like to have gone back, but been unable to do it.
Well, good morning. Thank you for coming here today. My heart's full today, getting ready to say goodbye to one of my heroes, Max Finley. And I've been reflecting the last 24 hours about the first time I met Max. 10 years ago, I started my first film on D-Day. Max was a part of the D-Day invasion, and he landed on Utah Beach, and I didn't have that many veterans that had landed on Utah Beach, and I thought it was kind of appropriate being from Utah. And I remember the Salt Lake paper came out, we did front page story, and I found myself just down here at his house for the first time. I met him and Vera, and that began a relationship of 10 years, and I've known Max now for 10 years. So 10 of his 91 years I've known him, so that's a proud moment for me. He's one of the first veterans I interviewed. For the last 10 years of my life, I've been documenting stories from what I call America's greatest generation, our World War II veterans. I've interviewed veterans from the Korean War, the Vietnam War, those serving today, the Gulf War. And it's been an amazing journey for myself, a very educational journey. But I'm telling you, we live in a day when our young people are looking for role models and heroes, and I have found mine in the many veterans that I've been fortunate to interview. You know, the same strength and stature that drove him to serve this country back in the 40s was there at the end of his life too. And when we come through Price, Utah, we would see Max,
And I would get out my video camera and videotape wherever we were at and talking. And one of the things I didn't know about Max till later was that he was actually around the concentration camp liberation at the end of the war. And I did a film on the Holocaust, so I got that part of Max's story too, in Buchenwald and things like that. But Max is nothing short of a hero to me. And it's been a great honor to have had the opportunity, like I said, to have interviewed so many people that have served this country. I've done over 1,000 interviews, if you can imagine. I kind of feel like I'm at the end of a journey too today. Hopefully my work will continue, but Max's story, by the way, is in my first film on D-Day, and I go into schools a lot and talk to our young people today about our veterans and the sacrifices they made for our country. So Max's story, Shannon, will live on for years to come in our schools. In fact, a year ago, December, we tried to get him to speak at the Carbon High School here. We came up and did a presentation, and he'd gotten sick. But their stories will live on. You know, we live in a day where our young people need to learn of the sacrifices that have gone before them so they can better appreciate our veterans and the freedoms we share in our country. And those of you here today that have served our country, I'm going to thank you and the American Legion Post that was here. You're the motivation for my work, for what I do, to honor our veterans, to give them a voice, a contemporary platform to tell their stories. And it never amazes me when I put my flag out at my home in Grand Junction. My mind always reflects back to the greatest generation, our World War II veterans, and the sacrifices they made. And to me, the American flag's not just a symbol of freedom, which of course it is, but it also represents those that have served our country. You can imagine 70 years ago, right now, Max was getting ready. They were starting to get ready for D-Day. You know, a young man, very strong, very vibrant. He was just newly married. And, you know, all these years later, I come into these veterans at the end of their lives. With Max, I was fortunate that he was around for a few years after I interviewed him. But for the most part, the veterans that I interview, I see them for the first and the last time. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I know there's a great respect here for our veterans. But that's why I'm here today, to honor Max and for the service he provided for our country, and to never forget. In fact, my documentary series is called Lest They Be Forgotten. And I've got a little commemorative pin here I'm going to place for Max. And I believe there's going to be a great reunion in heaven soon, or there probably is right now, of all these World War II veterans, all these men that I've lost. I've lost dozens and dozens of them. It seems like a week doesn't go by where I don't get an email or a phone call from a widow who just lost her loved one. But I'm grateful. Like I said, my heart's full. If the cause is great enough, it's worth the effort. It is by far worth the effort to come out here today. So again, I want to thank all of you today, and those of you who knew Max. He's one of my heroes, and I know I'll see him soon. And I thank you for this opportunity today. So I'm going to place this pin on his casket.